Hello and welcome to another episode of Releasing Your Inner Dragon. I am Marie Mullaney and I write fantasy books and I run a YouTubing channel. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Drake.
Max Alexander Drake, award-winning novelist, screenplay writer, game writer, teach writing all over the world.
And we are going to do another live edit show because we have had someone submit 1,000 words to us for editing. So before we get into that, please do hit the subscribe button, the like button, the share button, all the buttons, smash them all. We are quite close to hitting 1,000 downloads a month. And once we hit that margin, that milestone, the algorithms start showing us love and there's flowers and unicorns and rainbows and so on. So if you could help us out on that point, that would be fantastic. So I am going to share my screen. As we always say during these things, we do change names of characters and we do, hide people's identities and so on.
We won't dox you, we promise.
So these characters aren't normally named John and Ben and Nick and whatever else I've used. They normally have nicer names than that. So, just so you know. Okay. So I'm going to read and Drake will tell me when he wants me to stop. The soles of John Parth's boots hammered a staccato rhythm across the ancient metal deck plates that rattled through the corridor, even as the mossy stone walls dampened the noise and soft patches of earth grew more frequent. He moved with purpose, his footsteps echoing in the ambient glow of the passage.
The crystal... Stop there?
Yeah, sure.
First of all, just because that opening sentence is just this gigantic, huge run-on sentence.
Yeah.
That is a big... how many words is that? 38 words.
It's 38 words. That's a chunky sentence.
That is a long, long sentence. Remember, so when we're talking punctuation, and this writer's beyond this, so I'm not picking on his punctuation, but this is just a great time to talk about it. Punctuation is where readers swallow information. It's where they consume it. So while they're reading it, they're just putting words in their mouth. And then they don't really taste the information until that punctuation. That's when they swallow. So when you have a 38-word sentence, it's just like taking a bite of every single part of your meal, including the dessert and everything else, shoving your mouth all at once, and then trying to figure out what it tastes like. It's just too much. But also, if you listen to the last podcast that we did, which was also a critiquing episode, we talked a lot about the opening line and the opening hook. And this one, it doesn't hit it for me. The fact that someone is running doesn't make me want to continue reading for several reasons. First of all, I don't care yet, but second, how many books start with people running? How many opening lines are people running? So just be aware of that some things have been done so much that it really does become kind of like meh.
Yeah, so I'll continue. He moved with purpose, his footsteps echoing in the ambient glow of the passage. The crystal hissed into sand in his pocket, the stolen cloaking spell burning away like a fuse. He started right, but swerved left, keeping the neck of the leather sack in a death grip as he pivoted, surety guiding his steps while haste fueled them. The trailing figure of his companion flicked through on the periphery. This way. Ben, come on. A trap breeze ruffled John's dark hair as the zephyr slid deeper into the labyrinthian halls of the Fae court. Yeah, I'm going to stop here because I have a problem with this. So right here, he started right, but he swerved left. I don't know where I am.
Right.
And it's the same problem as we had in the previous episode, actually. I don't know where I am. So I've got ancient metal deck plates that are rattling in the corridor. Okay. But I've got mossy stone walls and I've got patches of earth. So am I in a building? Okay, cool. But how am I swerving right and then left? Have I just arrived at a T junction? Is that what you're trying to tell me? And in that case, that's correct. Starting right, then swerving left, fine. But I had to figure out that I'm at a T junction, and that interrupted my flow of reading.
So yes, all of that. We haven't set the scene, but there's a couple other things that really, really threw me out, even by this point. So first of all, the second paragraph is actually a major thing. And the first time I read this, it's so matter-of-factly thrown out as a kind of like a nothing thought that I totally did not understand the importance of it. Even later when they get busted, and we'll get there, and they're like, humans aren't allowed in here. I'm like, well, then why? How did they even get in? Like, it wasn't until you reread this to me that I was like, oh, right. They had the sky spell. Like, it's not like, this is a major plot point. They're in a place that humans aren't allowed. They are humans. Like, that needs to cause anxiety. And we need to understand the implications of why that spell running out is going to be like, you know, he looks over at his companion, his human face staring back at him. Oh, crap. Like we need to know that that is a momentous event, because if not, it's this throwaway line that we're never going to remember. And then there's a couple other things, like the trailing figure of his companion flicked through on periphery. That's a very weird way of saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a very weird way of saying that. And then the next two sentences, he thinks, come on, and then he says, come on. So when we get into inner monologue, and I use inner monologue probably more than any other author that I know. I love inner monologue. I use it 2, 3, 4 times a page. However, even though people sometimes hate inner monologue, no one ever pops me on it. Why? Because I have a very simple rule when it comes to inner monologue. I only use inner monologue if it actually has more impact to do it in inner monologue than in narration. This way, in my thought, has no difference than Ben, come on. There's no reason to drop into inner monologue for that line, because it does not add any depth to the story. Not only is it redundant, I mean, basically you're saying, come on, come on. You're thinking, come on, and then you're saying, come on. Like, that's just really weird. But also, even if it was just him thinking this way, it adds nothing. It does not add any depth, doesn't add any personality. It doesn't show me the character of this person's inner thoughts. And so therefore it's a waste of an inner monologue line. And it's redundant. Yeah. One last thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to pop is the word Zephyr. It is used correctly. It's a breeze. I mean, that's what it is. However, one of the weird things about fantasy is you really do sometimes lose access to some words, because since they are so uncommonly used in the vernacular of our real world, and they kind of sound fantasy-esque, some people, I believe, will probably read that and go, wait, is a Zephyr like a little thing? Is it a fantasy insect? Is it a sprite? Is it a whatever? Because it is a word that is not common. It's a very archaic word. So because it also sounds, and also it's the way it's written, as the Zephyr slid deeper into the labyrinth. Like, it just makes me feel like it's a thing the way it's written. And if I didn't know exactly what that word was, it might throw me out. It's just a word of caution.
I've actually read books where Zephyr is a creature.
Right, exactly. That's my point.
So and especially related to fairy court. So I actually thought that this might be a creature. Just
Oh no, it's definitely. I mean, he used it as what its
Yeah.
actual word is, which is a breeze. However, you have to know when you're writing fantasy, and I get that this is kind of sci-fi fantasy or whatever, but you have to understand that some words you just lose, even though they might be grammatically correct, just because not all readers are going to be able to pick up on that. So you got to be a little bit more cognizant to make sure that you and this, this goes against what I always say is don't spoon feed your readers. But in this one, what you're trying to do is avoid an accidental, like you just said, you thought it might be a creature.
Yeah.
But it never shows up again. That's how I know that it's not a creature.
Yeah.
Because no mention is it's literally just a breeze. But yeah, so that was the other thing in that. And the other thing is you're right. The fact that it has the halls of the Fey court also makes me go, yeah, you can't use Zephyr here. Like, you just can't. Like,
Because the thing is, fairies often have air spirits, and I've
right.
seen Zephyr used to describe air spirits.
100%.
So
100%. That's why I wanted to throw that warning out there. Like, you can't use that there. You even if you don't have Zephyrs in this world, you still lost that word.
Yeah.
Like, especially since you're in a Fey court.
Yeah. Okay. So he shot a glance over his shoulder, his eyes searching for the young man still trailing behind him. Ben's arm was up to the elbow in his sack. Get your hand out of there. Your father taught you better, didn't he? Don't eat the food until we're out of the circle, at least. John shuddered at the thought of Professor Mark's reaction. So this needs a paragraph break, because this piece of dialogue is not related to Ben. And I had a moment of, who's saying this? Until I reached this.
Yeah, but no. It is he who says that, not Ben.
I know that all, but I had a moment of like, wait, who's saying this? Because we have Ben's action here and then the dialogue.
Certainly, but it's Ben's action as being viewed by John.
I hear you.
No,
I still had a
agree
moment of confusion.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like, I would probably rewrite it in something like, and I hate writing out of my mouth, and this is a filter, so I wouldn't use it, but something like, John frowned seeing Ben's arm up to the elbow in his sack. Get your hand out of there. And then that would alleviate your problem there. Because technically it also doesn't need to be its own paragraph. It just needs to be reworked. But I've got a couple problems with this. In the last episode, we talked a lot about strong verbs and descriptive nouns and using the right ones at the right time. So, like, one of the things that threw me completely out of this is his eyes searching for the young man. You literally saw him out of your peripheral vision. You don't have to search for him. He's right freaking there. Like, if you can see him out of your peripheral vision, why is he? It's like he didn't go invisible. And so that's such an overuse of a verb. That verb is so strong that it threw me out of there, because I'm like, wait, how does he not see him instantly? Like, why does he have to search for him if he's running with him? And also, even in that sense, it says still trailing by. I don't search for somebody who's running behind me. They're right there. Like, they're just there. So I don't search for them.
Also, I don't like eyes searching. I don't normally have a problem with like the finger or the hand or the whatever doing anything, but eyes searching and eyes like it paints the picture. And this might just be me. It might just be me, but it paints the picture of eyeballs. Like,
right. This is a great one, because this is actually a very common argument, and we're on two sides of it. So let's go down this path.
Yeah. So for me, when you say eyes roving across the room, like, it paints the picture of a physical eyeball, like hopping through the room, and it just reads like I can deal with it once or twice on a page or whatever. Like, it's fine, But when it becomes common, I start feeling like everything is just eyes. Like, all the room is eyes.
Yeah. Well, you definitely should search out the word eye, because everyone overuses it. But this is a common argument that happens in writers groups and writers rooms across the land, which is some people hate personification of eyes. Other people understand that it's a poetic license. So like one of the things that I do that I still have people that will tell me they'll mark it and they'll be like, don't do this. This is so terrible. And I like it and I'm not going to stop. I like the phrase Drake cut his eyes at Marie. Like, I like that phrase. And because to me, it paints a really good picture where I'm like, I'm not moving my head. I'm literally just kind of like cutting my eyes towards you. But the people who hate personification of especially the eyes are like, so he chopped his eye out, like what? And I'm like, ah. So this is, again, this neither one is right and neither one is wrong. This is a subjective thing that you have to decide, how you're going to do it. So it's not necessarily the eyes searching that I had a problem with. It's the fact that he's even searching for him. But you're right. In this case, it's also what benefit. So like, I like the cutting of the eyes because it shows that he's just moving his eyes. And I can do it with just the word cutting as opposed to saying without turning his head, he looked out the corner of his eye at Marie. Like, I don't want to write all those words. It's just, to me, Drake cut his eyes at Marie.
I normally make that he's side-eyed.
Or, whatever. And that's fine. My thing here is I would agree with you on this case, not because of the personification of the eyes, but why are you bringing such a so like we're in a moment where it's dark and we can't see anything, and he strained his eyes searching for it. Like, okay, I'm fine with that because now we're actually bringing attention to the fact of we're using this organ at a much higher strain than we would normally use it. But in this case, first of all, searching, again, got a problem with that. He's not searching for the dude that's standing right next to him. But second of all, why are you bringing attention to his eyes that are straining to do this task? Because it's not a strain. So I would agree with you in this case that just, he shot a glance over his shoulder. The young man, and I wouldn't even do that. I would literally go with Ben there or whatever. It's. I think that was a little overwriting right there, or whatever. And I'd probably do it as an introductory clause. So shooting a glance over his shoulder. He saw, and I hate he saw. That's why I hate writing out of my mouth, because I tend to write filter. I speak passively, adverb heavily, and filter-y, but I don't write that way. So glancing over his shoulder, yeah, he checked on Ben. The young man's arm was stuffed in his sack. And then literally get your hand out of there works beautifully at that point now in the same paragraph.
Yeah.
Perfect. Like perfect. That literally fixes both of our problems. So yeah, it's again, we talked about this in the last podcast of editing. It's about understanding what you're trying to accomplish and then allowing that to happen instead of what you've written to accomplish the task. Yeah. So yeah, this is now, I love how this is written now. Except for the last sentence bothers me because I'm giving a warning to someone else and my warning makes me shudder. I get what it's there, and this is a preference thing, not a reality thing. But to me, it was weird that I warned you about something that then made me shiver for you. Like, I'm not doing it. Why am I worried about it? Be like, don't do that. You're going to get in trouble. Maybe I laugh at the thought. Now, of course, laughing would not be the right tone for this moment because they're running for their lives. But, I'm just saying, if I laughed at the picture of Ben getting his butt whooped by Dad, but why would I shudder over? Like, it just threw me out. And again, it's a preference thing. It has nothing to do with reality. It just made me go, why? Because that's really, you were thrown out by the dialogue. Who said this? I wasn't. I was thrown out on, wait a minute, who has the sack? Does Ben have his arm stuck in John's sack? And that's really what I did think. because of that line right there. That line made me think that Ben was digging around in John's sack.
Mm.
And that's reinforced later in the fight scene, because I also think that John is the one with the sack, because it's not clearly written there either. And so I was really confused about the sack. The first time I read this, the sack really was like a magical teleporting sack, and I couldn't figure out where the crap it was at.
Okay, so Ben's voice came out as a whine, but birch behind us, not before. The adage came easier than trying to reason with a boy's growling belly, while sympathy knotted John's own gut. Yes, I just want to stop here and say that I do like this, because this would not have struck me as an adage, but this tells me clearly that it is, which makes this a little bit of world building. Now I'm wondering, like, what is birch? I like that.
Right,
Nice.
exactly.
Smoothly done.
Although when I read it to myself the first time, I didn't read it as birch. The R was a T. And then when you read it to me later, I was like, oh, birch.
Well, I'm very familiar with this word, because the silver birch is the national tree of Finland. He quickened his pace, boots scraping against the scarred plates and invading moss as he made a swift turn, his instincts guiding him away from the sounds of pursuing boots. The diminishing spell would never stand up to direct scrutiny, which is nice. It's a callback to our cloaking, to our ticking clock.
So, so first of all, I think this is the third or fourth time the word boots has been used, and it gets used much more as we continue as well. So that is just way overused. But go back up to that line. And this is why this line made no sense, because remember, I had forgotten about the first line.
So the stolen cloaking spell burning away like a fuse, and then we're here, the diminishing spell would never stand up to direct scrutiny.
So again, because these are so unassuming lines, even when we just went back here and you reread that line, I was like, oh, okay. I still read that as if it was gone. The crystal hissed into sand in his pocket. So it's no longer a crystal, it's sand. So in my mind, the spell is done on that line.
Oh, no, I took this as time.
But it's sand. It's no longer crystal.
Yeah. So it's been used up, and now the spell is burning away. So it's a component that's used to cast the spell. The spell exists. It's burning away like a fuse.
Yeah. Again, it's just not, to me, it's not defined enough to let me know. So when I get here, I'm like, no, that spell's gone. What are they talking about? So that's why, again, without painting that picture for the readers, you're going to have readers that are going to get confused and lost.
It definitely needs a little bit more, I think. A little bit more emphasis on, especially since that is your ticking clock. It is your driving force.
Right.
And you want that to be hammering at the characters.
And it needs to be tied with emotions.
Yeah.
The character needs to be freaking out because of that. The character above, they need to go, oh, crap. And then down here, it needs to be another tied to emotion. Without it being tied to emotions, it doesn't mean anything. It's a throwaway line.
And then the luminescent corridor seemed to stretch. Does not need seemed.
Yep. Thank you very much. As the wise Yoda said, do or do not.
There is no seam.
It either stretches and twists endlessly, or it does not stretch and twist endlessly. It's so much stronger. Seam 2 is just bad. Yeah. Just don't use that word. There's the rare occasion where it's like, no, it really does need to be seam to this thing. But for the most part, never.
Once in a blue moon, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, the luminescent corridor. I'm just going to fix that and say the luminescent corridor stretched and twisted endlessly before them.
Right. Look at how much stronger that is.
Yeah. Its eerie silence disrupted only by their hurried footsteps and the distant sounds of other, harder boots.
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 I am pushing boots.
Too deep. We're too deep in the halls. His heart beat a warning bell against John's ribs, a mix of exhilaration and fear fueling his every step.
All right.
We could see. Hmm?
So pronouns point back to the last noun. Now, this pronoun, his heartbeat, is fine. But why put the proper noun after the pronoun? Even though, I mean, technically that pronoun, if you go back far enough, we do get to John. But this should be John's heartbeat, a warning bell against his ribs. Because when you write his heartbeat, a warning bell against John's ribs, it made me go, wait a minute. So someone else's heart is beating against John's chest. So is he carrying Ben now? Are they, is he holding him and he can feel his heartbeat? Like, so it's a weird way to do that, to start off with the pronoun if you're going to have the proper noun in the sentence as well.
Honestly, I think you could do that because you have John's name right there.
Well, but then again, that still falls to me. I'd rather get that proper noun at the beginning of a paragraph than at the end. Because you set the stage. We know it's John. There's no confusion. If you're going to have John in it, if you're going to use it in the paragraph, why bury it? That's my point. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Because really, what I thought you were going to do was you were just going to use pronouns in this paragraph. Technically, we have set that we're just in John, so every he and his is going to be John's until we actually bring the next paragraph in, which is where Ben finally has, is in it in the next thing. But we have Ben with the but I, and then we have Birch behind us, and then now we have that this is John. And then so we're in John, and that's why I said if you go back from that his heart, it goes back to John. But that is a ways away. That's 2 paragraphs before it. So by this point, 2-3 paragraphs, I don't like to go more than that without another proper noun, even if it's all the same, unless they're alone. If they're alone in the room, I'll set it up, John, and then it's just his, he, his, he, because it's just John. And bringing in John every second paragraph is annoying at that point when there's just John. But in this one, by that second paragraph, by the we're too deep in the halls, I would probably put John's heart. But I definitely wouldn't write his heart beat against John's chest, because that makes it kind of sound
it makes it a little weird. It makes it seem as though somebody else's heart beat against John's chest.
Exactly. And if you're going to have, even if you write his heartbeat against his ribs, blah, 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 and then you have the proper noun later in the paragraph, why? Just go ahead and get it up front, set that, make sure it's all about, we want the reader thinking, but we want the reader thinking about mysteries of the story. We don't want them thinking about stuff like, who's talking here? Whose heart is this? Like, you don't want them thinking about the dumb crap that you didn't spell out for them. They should never think about that stuff. So the reason why we're harping on this is because not because it's like, oh, this is terrible writing. It's because it has the chance of it confusing some readers. And there's no benefit. There's no benefit in writing his heartbeat against John's chest or his heartbeat against his chest, blah, 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 John later in the paragraph. There's no benefit. There's no payoff for writing it that way. So therefore, since there's no payoff, go ahead and put the John up front. That way, you're not going to have any confusion. There's no payoff anyway. So just do it that way and make sure there's just solid writing. That's really all that is.
I agree. Okay. So then we get to Ben, and he's like, "Oh, can you hear a voice, sir?" The wet tremble slid away from Ben's voice. Whispering awe grew in its place. "No, just the wind, Ben. It sounds like my mom." John froze for a moment at the edge of a junction. The halls took people like that sometimes. "Told your dad you should have joined us sooner, objector or not. She's calling." They needed to get back to Nick at the Gap. The unshed tears in the boy's voice boiled the scavenger's blood. John wheeled around, flat hand rising for a strike. "Stop simpering. She's gone, Ben. Focus. It's been years." So I'm going to stop here and say no, because we're in John's head. John would not think of himself as the scavenger.
Well, also look at that whole, you go back to the last edit. Technically, that is a very slight, teeny weeny little head hop, because the unshed tears in the boy's voice boiled the scavenger's blood. I don't know how you would know that there's unshed tears in someone's voice. That's a weird.
No, I'll give that to him. I'll give that to him because I can hear when somebody's on the edge of crying. Like I can hear that.
True, I can be convinced of that.
Yeah. You can hear that sound of like somebody swallowing back crying.
Right. But
I can give you that.
I agree. I retract my statement. However, you are correct. What I call this is belittling the POV. Yeah. With the POV, they are me. I don't look in the mirror and call myself, oh, look at the 53-year-old white man with the beard. Like, no, it's me. So when you are in your POV, you are your name and you are your sex. And if we want to get, insane, of the sex that you identify as, whatever. But I am not the writer. I used to say I'm not the fat guy, but after the cancer treatment, I lost all my weight. So I'm now the skinny guy. So I wouldn't say, the skinny old man ran out the door. Like, no, because I would never insult myself by calling myself the skinny old man. So yeah, 100% scavenger's blood. No, because then that makes me wonder who the scavenger is.
Yes, exactly.
So John can call Ben the scavenger boy, but he can't call himself that.
Yeah.
Because we don't think about ourselves in that manner. And so it throws you out of the story.
I will say that I have very occasionally done this in Sangwheel with Louis, but that's because Louis adopts multiple personalities.
Right.
So he does sometimes think of himself in that third person, but it's part of his gimmick.
That's a plot device. Right. That is 100% a plot device, and it absolutely works.
Yeah.
So yes, now the other thing that I would like to say about the section you read is it isn't egregious, but you got talking head syndrome. And the problem with talking head syndrome is every single line of dialogue that's by itself is almost always a missed opportunity to show the reader the scene. Can you hear the voice? No, just the wind, Ben. Okay, but that's a missed opportunity to show me how John feels about the fact that the boy is talking about this voice that he hears. It sounds like my mom. That's a missed opportunity to show me what the boy looks like when he thinks he's hearing the voice of his dead mom. And then she's calling. I have two problems with that. First of all, you interrupted the speech, but nothing interrupted the speech. So that M dash at the end of she's calling means that he was going to say more, but he was interrupted. But you don't have that until later. So if we look at the next paragraph, they needed to get back to Nick at the Gap. The unshed tears in the voice and the boy's voice boiled, boy, blah, blah, blah. John wheeled around, flat hand rising for a strike. That needs to be the first thing, because that is the action that interrupts the she's calling. She's calling M dash. John wheeled around, the flat of his hand raised to strike. Stop simmering. Like, that's the interruption, not that they needed to get back to John or to Nick at the Gap. So you have to pay attention to how you paint the motion, because it is a movie in their head. And so you didn't, that fails there, because you're interrupting a speech, but then the interruption doesn't come so much later. So now I can't picture it the way you think that I'm picturing it.
Yeah, I agree. I almost said like it should rather be ellipses, but actually you're right. This is an interrupting action. It's just too late. Like, yes, this needs to move.
But it's the same way with this one. In the next one, but I can hear M dash. The next words need to be, quote, halt humans, close quote. Yep. A thin, reedy voice snapped at them from behind John.
Yeah.
Because it's the halt humans that happens first, and then we get to description of what the voice is, but it's the halt humans that creates the M dash.
Yep.
Again, this has to do with painting a picture. We are painting a picture of action and motion and things happening in real time as the reader reads it. And if you break that order, if you do these M dashes and then do other stuff in between and then do the interruption and all this, the reader does not see what you think they see. And so it's just being cognizant of that motion picture that you're actually creating in their head and making sure that it actually flows the way you think it flows.
Yeah, so then we come to the like moment of interaction here. So Ben gripped the sack in front of him like a security blanket, but I can hear, and then, "Halt, humans!" A thin, reedy voice snapped at them from behind John. "There are no visitors today." John grimaced. "There's never visitors, you mean?" Still gripping the sack of loaves and large, tough berries, John raised his hands above his head and turned to face the Fey guard. The silver muzzle of a crisp-bolt loomed in John's attention.
Let's stop there because I do have a couple things. And they're very minor, nitpicky stuff. I don't like the question mark on John's response. There's never visitors, you mean? He's not asking the guard that question. He's telling him, you messed up. You said the wrong thing. Because if you put a question mark there, I'm going to read it as a question. There's never visitors, you mean? Like looking for a response? But he's not looking for a response. He's being a sarcastic jerk, which is great if that's his character. And then the other problem that I had is the verb John's attention. That is a really weird descriptor for loomed in John's face, loomed in
direction.
I like face, but that's just my opinion. Attention, it's the wrong. It paints the wrong picture to me. Every word paints pictures, so every word that I write is always written on purpose and by design. I choose that word because it paints the right picture for me. So, just my opinion on that one. Sorry, go ahead.
I do like the smooth little bit of world building here. We immediately know that it's a gun because of the word muzzle.
Yeah.
Like that's great. Very nicely
done.
It was. And just in case anybody didn't pick up on that, so basically the reason why we can instantly say that this weapon, a crisp bolt, is a gun is because of the word muzzle, which we would associate with a gun in our world, and that association draws the link. No further explanation of the weapon needed at this point.
Yep.
The archangel holding the pistol gleamed satin bronze, armor smooth and visor dark like ancient armor reborn. The metal wing curved as if shielding its fay. Never precludes all futures, human. Perhaps one day all of you will be worthy. On that day there will be visitors. The business end of the weapon swung back and forth between the two humans. John licked his lips. The heavy sack of food dragged at his arm. He sidestepped away from Ben. Look, we don't want trouble. We're hungry. Don't you get hungry? Don't move. Fine, sure, but what about the food, Pointy? Our studies indicate that you are given enough for your kind to survive.
Let's stop there for a second because there's something I want to talk about before we get into the actual action. And you probably already know what I want to talk about here.
Talking heads?
Yeah. I mean, this is a very tense, dramatic filled moment. By just having dialogue here, you are literally just passing up an amazing opportunity to build the tension of this scene. And this above in the talkiness that I talked about earlier, those are minor grievances. Like, okay, you missed an opportunity here that you could have done. This is an insult. This, you need to paint this picture. You need to make sure that the reader really understands the rapid rise of danger that's happening right here. And dialogue alone is not going to do that. It's just not. So that's the big problem that I have.
Absolutely. There needs to be actions and emotions interspersed throughout this dialogue to really let us feel the tension rising in this scene.
Yeah. And I was going to say this later. That is the biggest omission in this piece is the internal emotion of the character. Yes, you haven't set the scene either, but there's almost none. I mean, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head where there's self-doubt and fear. And like, even when he raised his hand, you don't tell me that he's pissed. You don't have any internal emotions. And again, we don't want to say, John was pissed and he got ready to slap him. We do want to have the slapping hand, but having a little bit of a, and
it is there in the boiled blood, but it's very slight. It is very slight.
And the reason why I don't remember that is because I got locked into the insulting the POV.
Yes.
Which made me miss the fact that there was a little boiling blood.
Yeah. So there is some emotion, but it is slight. It is on the light side with emotion.
Yeah.
Even by my standards, which is, I'm not talking about species survival, you fairy fascist. Can I just pause and say that?
Yeah.
Like, these two pieces have been beautiful for insults, really.
Yes. Love that. I love the fairy fascist.
Fairy fascist. It's amazing. I'm not talking about species survival, you fairy fascist. John lunged sideways, praying Ben would take the opening.
I don't know if I don't know, like, it works both ways, but I also like you fascist fairy.
It depends on whether you're saying like he's a fairy who's a fascist, or whether you're saying he's a fairy. He's a fascist to fairies. But it's great.
No, I
love it.
So I actually read it the other way. So fairy fascist to me makes it to where the noun is fascist and the fairy is the adjective. Whereas you fascist fairy you're a fairy because you have wings and you're in the fake citadel and all of that, but you're a fascist fairy. So I would probably switch those around.
Yeah.
Because fairy fascist to me reads like you're being insulting to his sexual orientation, to the fascist sexual orientation. That's just the way I read it. Not that that's what he meant. I'm sure that the author did not mean that in any way, but I think the correct way to do that would be you fascist fairy.
Yeah, I also think fascist fairy would technically be more correct, but I love it either way. Like it's glorious. It's a beautiful.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great insult, and I don't know if I've ever read the words, fairy fascist or fascist fairy.
The archangel pivoted, pistol muzzle following John's drop. Ben's bag of spoils slammed into the Fae's chest. The armored figure toppled backwards, fingers reaching for a set of controls in the shoulder strap. There was a crack as helmet hit rock and a stomach-turning crunch, and the Fae slid to the floor. I will say I think this is too fast.
Yes.
Like we've had a build-up of this immortal fairy. I don't know if it's immortal, but this powerful creature in armor. Yeah.
If a boy with a sack of food can kill these things, then why are they in charge? Like, I just go in there and just start beating the crap out of them with a loaf of bread and just take whatever I want. I mean, like, you did not earn anything from this. Your characters earned nothing. And so, yeah, I'm like, just grab some sandwich bread and maybe a tube of salami and just go in there and start just whooping up on these things. Because obviously they are wimpy little nothings. So yeah, just take the temple. Like, it's our fake temple. It's not your fake temple. It's the human temple now. Because obviously you can be beaten by a sack of bread. So yeah, I feel like they didn't earn anything. And also, I don't even understand it. What is even reaching for? There's not enough there to let me even understand the set of controls and straps. Why would he even go for it? What's going on? This is where I lost who had the sack. Because it's Ben's sack. And so I'm like, okay, so is John holding Ben's sack and he's hitting the thing with it? But I thought he fell to the floor. Did he throw it when he fell? Like, I was just so confused with this. Like, Ben slammed his sack of spoils into the Fae's chest. Because the sack didn't slam itself. And by writing Ben's sack, that means that probably Ben didn't do it, or why wouldn't you just tell me Ben did it? And so, yeah, this whole thing threw me out as far as action is concerned.
Yeah.
Just from the imagery of it, but then also, wow, these Fey guards are really easy to kill. Like
I
super
mean,
easy.
it's been
Barely an
built.
inconvenience.
Yeah, and they had a really like weird discussion here about species survival and food and stuff, giving me the impression of like immortal overlords.
Right.
And then he dies by getting hit with a sack of food in the chest. Like,
Yeah.
how?
Super easy. Barely an inconvenience.
Yeah, exactly. Super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Yeah. So I would definitely reconsider this. You know, get a way for them to escape rather, or something.
They have to earn it. Your
Yeah.
characters have to earn what they get. They
Yeah.
can't just be given stuff. There's no
Mm.
drama in it. There's no, it doesn't make me want to care about these people, because it's like they're not doing anything to actually earn it. And then what you said, I want to expand upon, because you hit the nail on the head. You have this, and again, there's not enough emotion, there's not enough description, there's not enough whatever, but we still have some buildup in severity, like, oh, we have to get out of here, because if we are caught, we're going to have bad things happen to us, maybe die, whatever. And then we get caught and we hit them with a loaf of bread and go away. And that's it. Like, there's no, why did I just go through this buildup of tension to not have a payoff? Like, it's so super easy, you know, as we're quoting a YouTuber, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, super easy,
Yeah.
barely an inconvenience.
Pitch meetings, which are
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
like, oh, should they get caught by the fairy guards? That's going to be a really big problem for them. No, super easy, barely an inconvenience. He hits him with a loaf of bread and he dies. Like,
Oh,
wow, that really is super easy. So yeah, you gotta, this should be a scene that I mean, I would probably, I mean, they have to, it comes down to sacrifice. So I've got a private client that I'm working with right now. And in her story, that's the big thing that we're working on, is she's not allowing her characters to sacrifice enough to make her overcome worthy of the journey that we're taking with this character. It's like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. She's got to lose something that makes me go, oh man, that's horrible that she lost this to get that. And I'm not saying, you know, somebody loses a leg here, but they, you know, something needs to happen here. But it also has to matter. So like, in my mind, I was like, even if it's as simple as losing the spoils that they stole, but if that's the case, then you got to go back and make sure that I understand how important the spoils are. Like,
and I think that was what the author was trying to do earlier, when there was like the boy was hungry and he's hungry, and I think the boy is almost hallucinating because of hunger, things like, so I think that was kind of the point. And here, when we're talking about species survival versus the survival of the individual, like, it's there. So I think you need to emphasize that, and then maybe in this fight have them lose one of the sacks of food, like they only escape with one or something like that, you know,
or even all of it. It just depends on what the story is. And I don't know if he was hallucinating because of the food. I thought the way I read that was that the magic of the place makes them hallucinate. So if it was food, that needs to be, basically everything needs to be ramped up. This is the perfect case, and we talked about this in the last editing podcast. This is the perfect case of, remember, you're writing two books at the same time. When you write a book, you're writing one on paper and one in your head. And I think you have a lot in your head that you think is in this story, but you didn't put it on paper. And, you know, as I always say, unless once this is published, you're going to go around and personally meet with everyone who buys it and explain things to them, then you need to just rewrite and put this stuff from your book head into the paper head, or paper book.
Paper book. So I think that my I mean, like I did, as with the previous one, I did read straight through, and I did like it is, there is a lot of good things here in this story. But I think that my biggest takeaway from here is scene setting. You've got to give more physical description. We've got to be able to see better. That ticking time clock of the spell disappearing needs to be stronger, and this fight needs something.
Thanks for reminding about that, because I wouldn't have thought about this had you not said that. The ticking time clock is worthless the way it's written in here, because here there's no payoff for it. So if to really capitalize on that, what has to happen first here is there has to be a moment of the guard going, wait a minute, are you? No, you're not. Like, let it, this is where it fails completely. So instead of maybe them just being caught, maybe he's walking by them and he says their normal Fey greeting. And then, he's like, I can't believe the spell's still intact. That's so awesome. And then the guard stops and turns and he goes, wait a minute. And he turns around and there's a pistol now pointed at him because he thinks he gets away with it. Like, and again, that's that drama of up and down that we want. So if you built the spell failing and the concern for that, you built him walking, they're walking directly at a guard now, or they turn a corner and there's a guard, and you're like, oh crap, that's it, game's over, we're done. And then it isn't, because they walk past it and he just nods at them or whatever, and it's like, oh, the spell's still there, thank goodness. And it's like, stop. And then they turn around, there's a gun in their face. Like, that's drama, that's storytelling. But again, now he can't just kill him with a loaf of bread. He's got to actually, they've got to earn that somehow. Maybe they throw the bag of food and knock the gun out of their hand and they take off running or whatever. I don't know. I don't know this world. I don't know the story. But hopefully you can kind of see now the way we're thinking about storytelling. Everything has to fit together like a puzzle. So you have this ticking time clock. You got to beef it up. We got to understand that it is a ticking time clock. We're in a place that's very dangerous. You got to beef that up and make sure that emotionally we understand how dangerous this place is. You have to have payoffs for this stuff. You have to make them earn what they get. So if they do get away, they have to earn it. They have to sacrifice to earn that. And so all of these things come into play that take this, which in my opinion is right now pretty weak as far as the story is concerned. It's got some great elements. But from a story, the drama is weak. The tension is just not there. And stuff like this that we're showing you, this is how you build that. This is how you get to that without really changing anything. The elements are there. You just need to actually now use them.
That was what I wanted to say. Like, it feels like everything is there to build the piece that you want to build. But right now, the puzzle pieces are not slotted into one another. They're all sitting separately on the table, and they have not yet been slotted together to form a coherent picture. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and it's missing some of the pieces as far as to make them fleshed out.
Yeah.
The building blocks are there, but the building blocks need more decorations on them.
Yes, but I think I think that's a good key takeaway from that one. More scene setting, make your ticking time clock matter, and emphasize the drama, and make your characters work for their wins. They shouldn't kill things with a loaf of bread.
Or if you're just going down the road to a humorous thing, then maybe the weapon is a loaf of bread and they just kill things with their magical loaf of bread.
And I think that is a good place to end this episode, and we will see you soon.
Magic bread is always a great place to end it. Sorry.
Magic bread is always a great place. Bye.